Hello, my name is Jeremy, and this is the True Crime Chronicles channel. In the courtroom, there's no absolute truth, merely your interpretation of occurrences against theirs. That's the mechanism of the legal system. The issue isn't about what's just and equitable, but about presenting the most persuasive narrative. This is a line from the television show, How to Get Away with Murder. In December 2018, a group of university peers took 20-year-old Sanda to the emergency room. He was unconscious, notably pale, and his skin was cold, unresponsive to any stimuli, leaving the doctors perplexed. He was a fit, active young adult without any history of illness. Yet there he was, lying with a body temperature of merely 27 degrees Celsius, in a comatose state. The medical examinations revealed that he had hypernatremia, a critically high level of sodium in his system. Typically, an adult ingests 5 grams of salt daily, equating to about 2 grams of sodium internally. Sanda, however, had 160 grams of sodium in his body, surpassing the 2-month average intake for an individual. The medical team questioned these supposed university friends about what had transpired with Sanda, inquiring about his activities the previous night. However, they simply shrugged, averted their gaze, and feigned ignorance about their fellow students' condition. Clearly, something was amiss here. Despite the relentless efforts of the medical professionals to save him, 20-year-old Sanda succumbed to multi-organ failure, a condition where his body's vital systems ceased functioning. The autopsy revealed startling findings. The pathologist examined the contents of the young man's stomach to understand the cause of the sudden demise of a seemingly healthy university student. To the doctor's astonishment and dismay, he discovered an absence of food and water over the past 2 days. Instead, the stomach contained unusual items like aquarium goldfish, heads of mice, and entire heads of eels. This indicated that Sanda had endured horrific experiences before his death. The case of Sanda garnered immense attention from online communities and media, rapidly becoming a topic of international discussion. Conversations erupted about universities concealing the shocking misdeeds of their students and the impunity enjoyed by offspring of affluent families. This situation brought particular focus to a student fraternity known as Reus. Established over 7 decades ago, its symbol was a Flemish lion. This secret fraternity was composed solely of male students majoring in law, engineering, and business. With around 30 active members, mostly hailing from prominent families, Reus stood as one of the most coveted groups at the esteemed Catholic University of Leuven in Belgium. Almost every student aspired to join this exclusive brotherhood. Annually, they admitted merely 2 or 3 newcomers. Abundant rumors swirled around the fraternity, heightening its allure and rendering it even more enigmatic and elusive. It represented a sort of student aristocracy, with significant clout and sway within that educational institution. In the meantime, the student fraternity Reus resumed its activities. They concocted a unique selection of items for their annual initiation tradition for new members. This initiation menu included starters such as grasshoppers and cockroaches, followed by a main course featuring live mice and fish. The dessert was a combination of coffee paired with an illicit substance. A disconcerting image showcasing the fraternity's initiation ceremony was circulated. In the photo, the principal members of the group were attired in warm outerwear like coats and cloaks, while 4 initiates were subjected to the challenges on their knees. In a startling display, one initiate had a pistol directed at his head, and another faced the barrel of a rifle. This photograph raised numerous questions. What other types of ceremonies did this clandestine group conduct? What were the exact happenings within the fraternity's walls? Considering the backgrounds of many members' parents, politicians, lawyers, distinguished doctors, and business leaders, what lengths would they go to shield their offspring if a truly grave incident occurred? Sanda wasn't actually aspiring to join the Reus Brotherhood. Born in Belgium, he was acutely aware of his fortunate circumstances. Sanda's father, hailing from Senegal, had sought asylum in another nation a few years prior to Sanda's birth. Like many fathers who are immigrants, he sacrificed a great deal to ensure his 2 sons could lead a respectable life. He knew that, because of their skin color, his children would have to work doubly hard to gain the same respect and career opportunities as native Belgians. Mr. Sanda's father, toiled long hours at a factory, spent nights mastering the local language, and either found or forewent sleep to assist his sons with their schoolwork. His sole aspiration was for his sons to achieve success in life. From an early age, Sanda was conscious about his future. He realized that success wouldn't come easily. It would require persistent hard work. Since kindergarten, Sanda had a close friend named Fairy. Living a mere 5-minute walk from one another, they were inseparable. They shared passions like biking, manga, and dreams of attending university, securing good jobs, saving money, and eventually relocating to Japan. They even made a pinky promise to remain lifelong best friends and one day travel to the land of the rising sun together. However, Sanda was never fated to see the birthplace of manga and anime. Beyond Fairy, he had numerous friends. As a teenager, Sanda excelled effortlessly in everything he tried. Whether it was solving complex mathematical problems or playing football for the first time, he amazed his friends with his natural talent. Though people often envy such gifted individuals, Sanda was beloved for his charisma and approachability, his knack for conversation, and his ability to connect with everyone. This natural charm and openness made it easy for him to make friends. After completing high school, Sanda enrolled at the University of Leuven, becoming the first in his family to attend such a distinguished higher education institution. This achievement filled his father with immense pride, surpassing any dream he had ever envisioned. Although the university was just a 30-minute drive from his home, Sanda opted to stay in a dormitory. He selected civil engineering as his major, dedicating himself from the outset to earning a master's degree in the field. Sanda, who appeared wise beyond his years, was driven by a desire to make his father proud. His ambition was to graduate, secure a well-paying job, and enable his father to retire, repaying the sacrifices made for his children's future. By 2018, Dia was in his third year of the 5-year program. He was already focused on securing employment post-graduation, so he steered clear of the party scene, concentrating instead on finding a lucrative job to support his family and pay bills. Aware of the potential challenges his skin color might present in landing a desirable position in a predominantly European, tightly knit industry, Sanda was under no illusion about the difficulty of his task. Armed with high academic achievements, interpersonal skills, and unwavering diligence, he recognized the importance of establishing vital connections. This realization led him to consider joining the Royce Brotherhood, a group synonymous with prestige, social networking, exclusivity, and the crucial connections needed for his career. In a world where not just merit, but also influential connections are highly valued, this seemed like a strategic move. Many members of the Royce Brotherhood hailed from well-known families, and Sanda's decision to apply surprised his friends, except for his older brother who saw the potential career benefits of such societies. His childhood friend Fairy, who believed in Sanda's natural sociability and friendliness, was initially doubtful of these fraternities and even tried to discourage Sanda from what he saw as a hazardous step. If only Fairy had known the tragic outcome that would befall Sanda, he would never have ceased his efforts to dissuade him. For Dia, the decision to join Royce wasn't made on a whim. He carefully considered the advantages and disadvantages before deciding to go ahead, with only 2 years remaining in his program. In 2018, Sanda was among the 10 students who successfully navigated the stringent selection process of Royce. From these 10, only 3, including Sanda, advanced to the final initiation stage. The initial phase involved the fraternity's permanent members filtering out candidates who didn't align with their interests, character, or communication styles. Now narrowed down to 3, the real ordeal commenced. A grueling 2 months of evaluation by the elite student group, culminating in an extensive initiation ceremony spanning 2 to 3 days. During this period, the new recruits were relentlessly subjected to sophisticated ridicule, continuously, without breaks, completely at the mercy of the fraternity's members. Sanda was aware of the harsh trials that lay ahead. He had heard tales of the brutal initiation rites. Nonetheless, he was willing to endure all the discomfort and repulsive challenges for a promising future, just like the other 2 candidates. Dia understood the process would be tough, involving mockery and pushing them to their limits. However, no one anticipates risking their life in such situations. Sanda had discussed this with a campus friend, a member of a different fraternity, who was oblivious to the specifics of Royce's initiation practices. This friend portrayed the initiation as a mere test of physical stamina, commitment to future fraternity brothers, and discipline. Although unpleasant, He believed it was a necessary and ultimately worthwhile experience. Sanda found the mandatory gatherings intolerable, especially since he was compelled to consume excessive amounts of alcohol. More distressingly, as a kind of initiation, he was required to drink the urine of the fraternity members. He, along with the other novices, were relentlessly exposed to verbal and psychological torment. However, Dia faced the most severe hardships. He was derided for his skin tone. In October 2018, a few months before the concluding ritual, the Brotherhood organized a significant event at the Student Union building. The aspirants were made to kneel while the established members of Royce alternated in forcing them to gulp down potent spirits or several liters of beer continuously. Naturally, after ingesting such a volume of alcohol, the novices were barely able to stand, yet they were still tasked with cleaning the venue. In their disoriented state, they staggered around the floor, mopping up their own and others' regurgitation. That evening, all 3 novices were obliged to clean, but the brothers concocted a different plan. They determined that Sanda alone should tidy up after the celebration because, historically, those with dark skin served the whites. This was a harsh declaration, but Dia felt powerless at that moment as he was resolute in attaining his objective. He was aware that this situation would eventually conclude. A representative of the student association attempted to reprimand the young men for their remarks. But what could he possibly do against 20 wealthy, noble, influential, and pampered youths? They were unafraid of anyone and conducted these acts openly, without any sense of embarrassment, as the fraternity members deemed themselves superior to all. They simply warned the staff member not to meddle in their affairs. Sanda endeavored earnestly to gain acceptance, considering his future prospects, but at just 20 years of age, he was essentially still naive. Despite this dreadful event, Dia persisted in attending the fraternity gatherings. Some might question why Dia continued to seek camaraderie with these individuals. His reasons were multifaceted. Firstly, he played soccer with some of them and interacted amicably. Secondly, Sanda was acutely aware of the extensive sacrifices his father had made for his education, and he vowed to fulfill those expectations. The student harbored hopes that the indignities would cease once he cleared the final hurdle. In Roos's 70-plus years of history, only 2 members had been of African heritage, and presently, only 1 was surviving. A dark-skinned student was inducted in 2015, and Sanda was poised to be the second to undergo the ultimate initiation rite. The final initiation, also termed baptism, was about to commence. Everything the novices had endured thus far was insignificant compared to the ordeal they were set to face that weekend. December 4th, 2018, marked the commencement of the initiation. At 4 p.m., the initial challenge began. Sanda, along with 2 other candidates, donned lengthy, flowing white robes and ventured into the city with bouquets of flowers. Their objective was to sell as many flowers as possible. The one who sold the fewest would endure various penalties, such as drinking sour milk, birdseed, and, inevitably, forced alcohol consumption. Sanda finished last, selling 30 roses fewer than his peers, leading to his punishment, consuming such an excessive amount of alcohol that his speech became severely impaired. In the second phase of the initiation, the novices were positioned on their knees and posed straightforward questions. By 7 p.m., the fraternity members were indifferent to Dia's inability to articulate responses. Predictably, he was outperformed by the others and subjected to further punishment. At the conclusion of this stage, 1.5 bottles of gin were forced upon him. His body, not accustomed to heavy drinking, began to react violently. His stomach contained nothing but alcohol. Sanda's complexion turned ashen. He was unable to stand, speak, or move autonomously, teetering on the edge of dehydration and repeatedly losing consciousness. Astonishingly, all these events unfolded in a public setting. As recounted by one of the fraternity members, the second trial occurred right on the sidewalk in front of a cafe in the city square. Yet, none of the bystanders intervened. They neither alerted the authorities nor called for a police patrol. At 9 p.m., the third challenge, titled Endure the Night, commenced. The novices were hauled back to the dormitory where 18 fraternity brothers resumed their relentless hazing. The task was to consume as many beer pints as feasible. By the trial's conclusion, all 3 participants were rendered unconscious. They were breathing but remained unresponsive to any attempts to rouse them. Yet, their unconscious state did not exempt them from ongoing abuses. In line with the fraternity's custom, if someone fainted at a gathering, they were subjected to being urinated on. The brothers viewed this as a manifestation of frailty and an opportunity to exert their dominance. Proof of these acts was captured in a video taken at 11:40 p.m., which they subsequently attempted to erase. With the first day's competition at an end, the 3 new initiates were dragged to their quarters and unceremoniously deposited on their beds, with the water supply disabled. For amusement, their possessions were defaced with ketchup and chocolate, and their door was locked. This meant that should any of the boys regain consciousness after consuming such a lethal volume of alcohol, they wouldn't even have access to water to alleviate their thirst. This was merely the initial day of the initiation at one of the nation's most esteemed universities. Yet, the most harrowing experiences were yet to unfold. The following day, December 5, 2018, at approximately 10:30 a.m., the fraternity members prepared to proceed with the final stages of the grueling initiation. They roused the 3 initiates, placed them in vehicles, and drove them out of the city to a secluded village roughly an hour away. A fraternity member owned a small cottage there, shrouded by thick woods, ideal for concealing their activities. En route, they made several stops to acquire items necessary for the ceremony. The students bought aquarium fish, eels, live rodents, as well as bird and dog feed from a pet store. Next, they visited a supermarket and obtained fish sauce, commonly used in Asian cuisine for its flavor-enhancing qualities. It's high in sodium, with about 16 to 70 milligrams per tablespoon, nearly 70% of the advised daily intake, and is not typically consumed in large amounts. They also purchased duck eggs, sardines, clams, shrimp paste, mussels, among other products. During one of these stops, they encountered an academic who observed that one of the students evidently required assistance. She addressed her concerns to the fraternity members and even proposed calling the police. However, the students persuasively reassured the professor, claiming Sanda was merely intoxicated and in shock. They assured her that the initiation had concluded, and they intended to sober him up with a cold bath. Dismissing the professor's apprehensions, the group proceeded to the cabin in the forest. The details of the subsequent happenings were reconstructed by the police through recovered deleted video footage and scarce evidence. The complete truth of the events that transpired in that forest remains elusive. Over several hours, the 3 initiates were compelled to excavate a substantial trench, into which they were subsequently placed. As the initiates struggled to keep warm, the other fraternity members, a group of 18 young adult men, encircled the pit. They filled it with freezing water and live eels. In Belgium, during December, the average temperature ranges from +3 to +7 degrees Celsius. When the initiates became cold, the permanent members of the fraternity urinated on them from above as a twisted means of warming them up. At this stage, Sanda was suffering from dehydration and was still inebriated from the previous night's events. Even if he had the will to stand and leave, his physical state rendered it impossible. Under normal circumstances, to formally reject the initiation process, one simply had to ring a bell situated away from the trench, thereby forfeiting their place in the fraternity. The initiates could have accessed this bell at any time, but in this instance, the bell was either deliberately or inadvertently omitted, leaving Sanda without a means to signify his refusal of the initiation. His inability to stand or speak due to his condition rendered him powerless. The 3 inebriated, weary boys sat in the icy water, subjected to the senior fraternity members' acts of urination and defecation. They were then coerced into biting off the heads of live mice and eels in the water, and to follow this with fish oil. After enduring over 6 hours in such brutal conditions, Sanda's body began to shut down, and he started losing consciousness. He was extracted from the water, clothed in dry garments, and placed beside a fire. As he curled up on the grass, remaining in the fetal position for 2 hours, the initiation rites carried on around him. Instead of receiving medical attention, the students documented the situation with photos and videos, while Sanda emitted distressing sounds, indicative of excruciating pain. The excessive intake of sodium triggered a severe elevation in Sanda's blood pressure, resulting in a nosebleed, and he became entirely unresponsive. At 8:57 p.m., a senior fraternity member eventually made the decision to contact emergency services. Following their advice, the students transported the unconscious Sanda to a hospital. To prevent soiling the car's interior, they placed his body in the trunk. Upon arrival at the emergency department, the fraternity members withheld crucial information from the medical team regarding Sanda's recent diet and alcohol consumption. After leaving him in the care of the hospital staff, they departed with the intention of resuming the initiation upon his discharge, an action that left Sanda with no real chance of recovery. While the medical professionals conducted tests and endeavored to unravel the cause of his condition, Sanda's organs began failing. Due to the severity of his state, he was transferred to Antwerp University Hospital for its superior facilities. There, Sanda's heart ceased functioning. He slipped into a coma, and subsequently, the 20-year-old tragically lost his life. The primary cause of death was identified as toxic levels of sodium in his body, a direct result of the excessive consumption of fish sauce. The hospital informed the police, prompting an immediate investigation into the circumstances surrounding his death. By 10:40 p.m., the other two initiates who had continued with the initiation ritual were also hospitalized. Upon learning of their children's dire condition, the parents hurried to the hospital. Meanwhile, fraternity members hastily worked to erase any evidence of the initiation. They filled in the trench used for the trials, cleaned up the room that had been smeared with ketchup and chocolate, reinstated the water supply, and purged their phones of incriminating messages, photos, and videos. By the time police arrived at the scene, there was no physical evidence left. However, investigators were later able to recover the deleted data from the mobile devices. Despite the recovery of this evidence, the investigation encountered significant hurdles. The children involved belonged to influential families, whose parents quickly sought legal representation. Although the evidence implicating 18 fraternity members in Sanda Dia's death grew stronger, the investigation was protracted and met with continual obstruction from the high-powered parents. All 18 students wiped their social media profiles and limited their communication, speaking only through their attorneys. Following the tragedy of Sanda's death, the Reyes fraternity was dissolved. The university imposed disciplinary measures on all involved, requiring them to complete 30 hours of community service and write an essay on the role of traditions in student organizations. Remarkably, none of the participants were expelled from the university. The 18 individuals involved in the incident completed their education without significant repercussions. In response to this outcome, teachers aware of the situation authored an open letter advocating for harsher penalties for the group, but no additional measures were enforced against these students. The formal legal process concluded in July 2020. Following this, attorneys representing two members of Reyes sought further investigations, seemingly as a tactic to reframe the entire incident as a tragic accident and attribute blame to the deceased student for purportedly weak health. It wasn't until May 26, 2023, that the Antwerp Court of Appeal delivered its verdict, finding the 18 fraternity members guilty of involuntary manslaughter and degrading treatment. Each was fined €400 and sentenced to perform community service. Additionally, they were collectively ordered to pay approximately €30,000 in compensation to the Dia family. To avoid impacting their future prospects, the students' identities were withheld. The leniency of the verdict for those responsible for Sanda Dia's death sparked widespread dissent, leading to protest actions in various cities. Despite these demonstrations, no substantial changes have been reported as a consequence. In this case, the perceived lack of justice remains a poignant aspect of the story. If you like this story, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new videos. Don't forget to like and share your opinion in the comments. This is Jeremy. See you in the next video.